Hola, buenos días. Como ha dicho, soy Jelle Van Der Giessen. Significa más o menos en español Julio del Ebro. Y estoy holandés, que puedes ver soy casi 2 metros y es porque mucho terreno en Holanda es abajo del mar, entonces tenemos que respirar en cualquier situación y por eso el tema es muy importante. Vivo en La Haya, he vivido aquí también en Madrid hace mucho tiempo, pero he olvidado mi español un poco, entonces voy a cambiar en inglés. So, as I said, my name is Julio del Ebro, and I'm the Chief Investment Officer of NN Group. And that means that I'm responsible for investing the monies that we have as an insurance company. And I'm also a board member of the IIGCC, and this is an NGO in London, where all insurance companies, pension funds and asset managers can become member, and all together they come up with strategies on how to deal with climate change. And they represent more or less 35 trillion of assets under management, which is an enormous amount. And with this amount, and with also for the investments that we have with NN Group, we want to be able to make a change in climate change. And we invest largely for a part in corporates and corporations, and it's the part that we are going to talk, or I'm going to talk about today. We also invest in real estate, and we also invest in governments. But the part, and talking about climate change and carbon emissions, the part on the corporations is by far the most important, the largest, and where we also can have the best improvements. So I'm going to talk to you about how do we look at the corporations and how are we going to use our influence, as you can call it, as an investor, on those corporations for them to reduce their carbon emissions. Because we, as NN, we have committed ourselves to 2050 to be net zero. And that also means that we need to be net zero for our investment portfolio in 2050. And in order to do that, we need to have the companies that we are investing in also gradually bring to net zero. And how do we do that? Because that is the topic I would like to explain you today. So, and this goes together with the IIGCC, and hence it is a strategy that we follow as NN, but many other investors do the same, so that we all work towards the same goal. And for this, we use 6 criteria. So one, we want that a company has the ambition also to become net zero in 2050. We want that they have a strategy, so how to get there. So what is their strategy in order to get it net zero in 2050? But we also want that if they want to be net zero in 2050, they put targets. And those targets we don't want to have set just for 2050, but we already want to have that companies set targets for today, but also for 2025 and to 2030, so that there's a smooth glide path to this 2050, and that it is not just something very far away in the future. So as the 4th point, we want that companies measure their performance. So it is good that they set targets, but you also need to show as a company, how do you do against those targets? And that immediately leads to the 5th point. This is transparency. So we also think it is very important that companies are transparent in what they do. And last but not least, in order to get to 2050 net zero, companies will need to invest money. And we want to see that the capital allocation to the necessities, to the necessary strategies in order to get net zero are indeed also made. No? So we want to see what the companies put the money where their mouth is. So you have the 6 criteria, and it is basically it follows like any other strategy a company has. Only this one is for net zero in 2050. But normally companies make strategies, ambitions, targets, report on it, etc. This is the same, but now for climate, and very focused on this topic, in addition to the financial situation and the way companies report. So then, if we know what the criteria we want that companies meet, so how do we deal with this then? So we are going to look at those companies and in our portfolio, and we are going to see which ones already meet those 6 criteria. And honestly, there are not many companies at this moment that do. But those companies, they have all those 6 points, and these are the companies as investors we really like. So we think that with their climate strategy, with this enormous trend that we see at this moment, their performance will be good. And the risks in those companies as an investor will be significantly less than with other companies. Then there's a large box of companies that do not meet those 6 criteria, but maybe 3 or 4. And these are the companies that as investors we talk to, and not only from NN, we immediately talk ourselves to them, we also do that, but we also in the larger community of investors, this IIGCC I just mentioned, but there's also a Climate Action 100+ initiative, and all investors together talk to the companies, and they say, well, we know that you have these 3 or 4 criteria ticked, but we want that you, in the end, meet all the 6, and we are going to help them, and we are going to talk them, and we are going to convince them in order to meet all those 6 criteria. And we give that a certain time frame. We say, well, we are going to make a plan together in 5 years, and that's what we need to achieve. What do you need to achieve as a company in 5 years? With all the aim is to bring them to the compliant or the aligned box of companies. So engagement with companies from investors towards the companies is a very important point. And then you have the last box, and this is still quite a large box with regards to the number of companies that we own or where we invested in. And these are not necessarily the larger companies, also not the ones with a lot of carbon emissions, but it is still a large group. And there we don't really know what they do, because they are not communicating very clearly or very logically in what they do. So here, as an investors, we have a large task to understand what are those companies doing. Are they willing indeed to look at those criteria, and are they indeed also willing to go on the path meeting their criteria, so moving into the left situation. So again, here as an investor, we are going to talk and engage with those companies and to understand what is it that they do. And we will find out that there will be companies that are already, maybe we should put them in box 2 or even 1, but there will also be companies that say, well, climate change, well, we don't think that is very important for us. And these companies, as investors, we think are becoming too risky, because it is such an important development, it is such an important trend, that we don't believe that over time these companies will survive. We consider that as stranded assets. So in time we will see that first we need to do all our homework and to understand, but in time we will redirect our investments to the companies that are really embarking on a net zero strategy. So, in short, we have the 6 criteria: the ambition, the strategy, the targets, the measurement against the targets, the transparency or the clearness in what they do, and the capital allocation. And based on this, we put those companies in boxes. And as investors, we try to put them all into the aligned box, because if they're aligned with 2050, automatically our portfolio will be as well. And this is a very large strategy for investors. Then there's one thing more I would like to tell you. That is, we also are investing in what we call green solutions. And we have a target as NN to invest 6 billion in 2030 in green solutions. And these are particularly companies or real estate developments, if you will, that do something really extra in order to reduce the carbon emissions. So it can be renewable energy, technology, but also on very efficient and clever construction with very limited amount of emissions. So I would like to conclude it with that. I got a very limited amount of time to talk to you about what we do and what we think as investors is important for corporations. And if corporations move that way, we automatically will as well. Thank you very much.